Hey guys and girls, Rajat here. So a lot of you have written to me that what should we learn next after writing some HTML and CSS, and turns out that a lot of you guys or someone who is dabbling with web development for the very first time in his or her life are confused about like how should he or she proceed with this web development thing. Like what should he be doing or she be doing after writing some HTML and CSS or after creating that first web page. So in today's video, let's quickly talk about it. Okay, so the very first thing you have to do after writing some HTML and CSS or creating that web page for the very first time in your life is to host this thing on a web server, because that is the primary intention of creating a web page, because you want to see that web page in a browser or you want to show that web page to someone using a browser, because web pages exist in the context of browsers, and the way browsers from around the world can access this web page is to request that web page from a web server. So your very first task after writing your first web page is to put that web page or your HTML and CSS files onto a web server so that anybody who has access to your web server can access your HTML page. So that will expose you to the life cycle of the HTML page, and then you can read more about how internet works. I have already created a video about it, so that will tell you like what happens under the hood when a browser is requesting your web page. So after you have hosted that web page on a web server, the next logical progression would be to make that page dynamic. Now, how would you make your HTML page dynamic? See, let's suppose you have some section on your web page which represents or which displays some static data, because if you have got only HTML and CSS, most probably your website will be static. Now you need to update that data with something which is not static. So every single time you reload or whenever you want to push some new data on that web page, you can do that. So how can you do that? You have to make your web page dynamic. Now you have to use JavaScript. Now you have to use some sort of backend servers which can actually help the web page in getting the new data, or you have to get that new data into your JavaScript from elsewhere, from some servers that is located elsewhere on the internet. So now you have to update the static information with the dynamic one. So this will actually expose you to server-side scripting and server-side programming, backend programming, JavaScript programming, and things like that. So once you have got that dynamic web page which can show some real-time data or some sort of data which you can eventually update even after uploading your HTML and CSS on the web server, then you can say that you have got a dynamic page. And in today's world, it is all about dynamic pages, because there are many, you can say, SDKs or site generators which can create static sites for you, and most of the companies are not looking for someone who can only write static web pages. So you have to dive into some dynamic programming, some server-side programming if you are into web development or you are trying to make it in web development field. So try to make your pages dynamic, try to change the information that is static as of now. The third logical step after you have created a dynamic page is to finally learn a full-fledged backend framework so as to generate some HTML and CSS on the fly, because in modern day development or in a real world development, you would probably be creating these HTML pages and CSS files using some backend framework, because not all HTML pages are generated by hand in today's web development. So you have to learn some sort of backend language which can allow you to generate these HTML pages, these CSS files on the fly based on the business logic. So after you have ensured these three things, then you can be sure that you know a great deal about web development. So that is how you can progress into this whole web development thing. I have told you about three major things you can do, but there are certain other things which you can do as well. But first of all, you have to ensure these three things, because if you can ensure that you are proficient in doing this thing, the other things are going to be much easier. But if your concepts are weak, if you just do not know about how to generate dynamic pages, how to fetch data from elsewhere using JavaScript, you are going to suffer. So my request to you would be to first of all ensure that you know the basics, right? So those were my 3 things. I hope that this video was useful to you. And in case you have any more doubts regarding this subject, there is a comment section. You can leave a comment down there. I read every single comment and I will try to address your query to the best of my knowledge. And I see you guys over in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.